Okay. Good evening. My name is Bolson Drumlubban. I'm 36 years old and a British-born Sri Lankan Tamil. Right from my outset, from my early years, I've always liked science. My parents are science teachers. My mum worked in a primary school, head of science. My dad did chemistry. And in 1996, I embarked on a Masters in Chemistry at Imperial College. 4 years later, having fallen out in love with chemistry and science, I decided to do what most people do in Imperial, and I went to the city. So 5 years working in investment banking, having worked at JP Morgan in the graduate scheme for 2 years, 4 years working in equity derivatives risk. I did what most people do. I took a career break. One of the best things I'd ever did in my life. Took about 9 months off, considered my opportunities while sitting on a beach, while travelling countries, doing a fishmongering course, reviewing movies for a friend's website. I decided I'd go back to the city. What else would I do? I decided to go to management consultancy. I know, something I considered when I was back at university, but for me it was a bit odd. Very analytical at my early age, throughout my whole life. Like being a consultant right out of university for me was a bit of an oddity, so which is why I joined a graduate scheme to, I guess, learn from industry. And I think that's one of the takeaways for me is kind of acquiring skills, useful skills, is always going to be put you in good stead for the future. I worked in management consultancy, but in investment banking, working for a range of companies and a range of clients across the city. Thought it was going to take me across the world. First project was in Japan and Hong Kong. And from then onwards, I never moved, just buildings across the square mile. After 5 years working in management consultancy, I had that kind of that itch. I wasn't really comfortable working for a boss. I was kind of fed up with that corporate life, and I wanted to probably have another career break. It's nothing like having a midlife crisis and starting early. You can have several more for the rest of your life. So I decided I'd actually take things into my own hand, and I'd go freelancing, so very much becoming my own boss, and also I wanted to kind of have more time. I like the idea of earning a lot more money, having a lot more autonomy, and having that time off in between contracts to try and do my own thing, and try something a bit more entrepreneurial. So kind of going back to my parents, as I mentioned, are teachers. They're immigrants from Sri Lanka. We actually moved to Nigeria in 1983, so when I was about 3.5, because my parents got teaching jobs over there. But when my parents came back to London, my dad at the age of 50 actually quit his job and set up a tuition company. So I guess something being an immigrant and him doing that probably spurred me on to kind of think, maybe this is something I should consider. And so that's why I went freelancing, kind of a halfway house in my mind between the corporate world and the entrepreneurial world. After 9 months working in Bank of America on a contract, I decided I was a little bit bored and quit again. It's a bit of a trend here. First job 5 years, second job 3 years, third job 2 years, fourth job 9 months. Clearly I don't like working for people. I need to be my own boss. And I got dragged along to a startup weekend. So this is my freelance bit. I clearly missed that slide, but never mind. Actually, there's some interesting words on there. You know, urgency, importance, work, time, productivity, projects. Quite an interesting kind of halfway houses. I think skills and mentality that you can take across in your everyday life. So I went to a Startup Weekend. Startup Weekend is a global initiative. It's a not-for-profit organisation that essentially helps accelerate people who are budding entrepreneurs or people who are considering it as an option for the future career. You go in on a Friday, you get beers and pizzas, you're allowed to pitch one idea for 1 minute and canvass enough support. If you can get 4 to 8 people in your team, you can work on that idea for the whole weekend. And the whole idea is not to actually build something, it's really to validate, make or break your idea. I'd had the idea for a charity. My auntie and uncle are pacemaker wearers, and I was interested in always, I guess, trying to make a change and trying to help people. I've always done charity work throughout my life. I went to Startup Weekend, pitched an idea, the idea for the reuse of pacemakers. Managed to scramble together a team of 5 people. We did quite well, validated the idea, managed to build some relationships that weekend, getting together with and creating a partnership with the University of Michigan, pioneers into the research of, into the reuse of pacemakers, and Pace4Life was born. So Pace4Life is my charity. I set it up in 2012 at the Startup Weekend, and and I've worked on it for over 2.5 years. I never went back to work after Bank of America for 2 years. I pretty much dedicated my time to it. It took me on an awesome journey. I got to watch the World Cup, I got to watch the Olympics, those are sidelines. But I ended up in Chile. I applied for an incubator run by the Chilean government called Startup Chile, and that allowed me to extend my time to dedicate myself to Pace4Life and trying to get it off the ground. So far, we've managed to get hundreds of funeral directors on board. We've got a strong working relationship with the University of Michigan, and our remit has now expanded. We no longer are just focusing on reusing pacemakers. We're actually now attracting donations of brand new pacemakers from major manufacturers such as Boston Scientific, Medtronic, and Biotronic. We're now actually operating something in between, which are called out-of-shelf life devices. These are devices that are manufactured, boxed, but never actually sold. They have a sell-by date because of accounting standards, and technically are seen as past their sterilisation date, but they've never been opened. And I've now acquired about 30, 40 devices, which are worth over $500,000, which we're looking now to implant in January next year. So it's been a bit of a weird and wacky journey for me, I guess, going from the science degree to investment banking to consultancy and then setting up my own charity. And I now freelance, so I kind of use freelancing as a method to kind of have the time off, to fund what I do, to then also have the time off and maybe part fund the charity in the short term. Our longer term objective is, with the University of Michigan, is to create a global not-for-profit that reuses pacemakers in the developing world, providing pacemakers to the underprivileged people who cannot afford these life-saving devices. A pacemaker can cost up to $10,000 alone, way out of the price range of the everyday person in the developing world, and we can probably refurbish a pacemaker for as little as $50. So it's quite a large price gap that we're looking to address. So we've already run a mission. We're in Ghana in 2013. We actually implanted 5 pacemakers for patients who are now living quite healthy lives, and we're looking to implant a further 20 pacemakers in Sudan in January 2015. So I think the takeaway I'd say to people is, irrespective of your background, sometimes the journey is more important than kind of the result. It can take you to weird and wacky places. I think as touched upon, you can meet all kinds of people who are very encouraging of what you do, very supportive in different ways. It's not just about sometimes giving money to charities. Sometimes they're quite happy to dedicate their time and their skills. Some of my old colleagues from the corporate world have put me in contact with my lawyers. They provide me with funding. They provide me kind of expertise in different areas, and I've had to kind of upskill myself and learn things that I didn't learn in my last 12, 14 years. So I think the world is out there and there's a lot of opportunities, and irrespective of what your education or your kind of corporate or kind of professional lifestyle, you can still end up in the charity sector one way or another. The question is how you want that to be. Okay, so thank you very much.